On today's episode of Scientific Healing, you're going to hear what the dissonance is just like, you create a vision board and you put your face on a sexy body and you say you want to do that. But the next step, you're going out and you're eating chocolate and ice cream and you're sitting as a couch potato and you're not exercising and you're not going to bed and you're not drinking your water and you're doing all the things opposite. So what you've done is you've created this inner conflict. I want that, but I'm doing this because really what I want is this. Here is today's scientific healing tip. You know that in the crook of your hand, like right here, there is an important point that when you're feeling discomfort or emotional pain, you can press it. And the more you press it and the more painful it is in there, that means that there's a block. And you can just keep massaging that point and it will help release whatever is causing the pain. And I have a little tension in my back and I can feel it releasing now. So you can manipulate and change that just change it as you're working it. So when you're sitting somewhere and you need to release things, and I can feel that there's more tension in the right hand, and manipulate and release it. So you just keep massaging it. And I noticed that tension that I was feeling a little bit in my upper back today is now almost completely released. And you can even do a little experiment with yourself and ask you, what pain level am I feeling, or what tension level am I feeling? And it was about a 3, and now it's not even there. It's completely gone. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Scientific Healing Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Anastasia Chopelas. I know the power of vibrational healing by combining physics and ancient healing arts to create my own system that has produced medical miracles for thousands of people. To discover how you can create these for yourself or your clients while building a business that can sustain you well, go to scientifichealer.com/energize me. We're going to take a slightly different journey today. We're going to be talking about the science of all healing. And with me in conversation is my fabulous co-host, Gwen Leopard. Welcome to the show, Gwen.
Hey, thank you, Anastasia. It's so great to be here. I'm really interested in this topic. I'm super excited that we're going to look at what is behind the science, because we always talk about you being a scientific healer.
Exactly. And I do talk about science quite a bit, but what this topic is spurred by is that I had a conversation with someone who asked me that question, like, what is it, can you generalize, or what is it that you see in people that is like a different point of view than, let's say, somebody else who's doing a massage or doing acupuncture? Like, they only see bits and pieces, but I step back and look at the whole, like it's more holistic.
Right.
And so he asked me, so what's going on with people? So today, the science of all healing sounds a little pretentious or ambitious.
It is. That's an ambitious title. And, you can listen to so many different people in the healing arts and they have a different solution to so many ailments. So healing seems a lot more complex than what you're saying. So can all ailments be lumped into one solution? Seriously.
Well, yes and no. So the thing is that the causes are more complex, but the end result is actually a lot simpler than we've been led to believe. Like, imagine we've got all these different kinds of doctors. You've got an ear, nose, and throat, and you've got a rheumatologist, and you have a heart specialist, you have surgeons, you have brain specialists, even psychiatrists, which are working on the chemical structure of the brain. And then you have orthopedic doctors. So it seems like we're looking at the body as a series of unrelated parts.
Right. Well, we do. Absolutely. That's how we look, exactly how we look, or the Western medicine looks at our bodies. And I think how a lot of people look at their bodies.
I think so too. And so I've worked with thousands of clients and animals. So the great thing about working with animals is they don't have agendas like people do. Like we don't, they're affected in different ways, usually from the outside. Like if you mistreat an animal, they'll go into anxiety and that will create disease for them, for
Right.
example. We people like to make things really complicated. And
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do, complicate things. I really would like to simplify. Do you have something for that? That's a different show. Sorry.
well, actually, it's kind of like the way my brain works as a scientist. So the way my brain works is that whenever I come across a new phenomenon, I like to kind of put it in order, like where does it belong in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of like looking at a painting. So you put a couple of brush strokes on the canvas, and so now how do you connect them? So you have this piece of evidence and that piece of evidence, and you're not quite sure how it connects. So now as a scientist, what we do is we now put another stroke on the canvas and test it out. Does that fit the picture? And then you put another stroke and, oh yeah, does that fit? No, that doesn't fit. So now I need to do it another way, right?
I love that you just connected art and science.
Well,
you are.
well, science is art. And because it really, it's just like two strokes on the canvas. Really, we just have like these tiny bits of information, and we're now trying to make an overall scheme, like the physics of everything. Like, how does light and gravity work? No one knows yet. We have only bits and pieces of it, and we're trying to connect those things. And in some ways, there are some people that are really getting close, like, if you've ever read, there's a book out there written by a layperson who talks about the 0 point energy and how that can explain all gravity, right?
Okay.
And so what I discovered is that the same protocols that heals kidney disease or can also work for reversing dementia, relieving anxiety, releasing old relationship baggage. Now I have extra protocols for those, but the initial part that when I teach this, the initial part is always clearing up the energy fields around the body. So the energy field is the thing that we emanate out. Everything has it, even rocks, right? Everything. The rocks only have
that's
really
right.
tiny.
You study rocks. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I studied minerals, which
Minerals.
are
Okay.
components of rocks, but they have structure. They have an internal energy. If anything is above absolute zero, you can actually measure what vibrations are actually inherent in the material that they're sitting in there right now. Like if I pick up this, I have a rock here, an amethyst. If I pick that up, I can shine a laser light on it and find out what vibrations are sitting in there. And if it's vibrating, it's emanating. And
if it's vibrating, it's emanating.
Yes, if something is vibrating in any way, in other words, there's an electrical impulse. Like if something is vibrating, the electrons are changing, and it is going to be creating a field around it.
And so is that a frequency? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, everything has frequencies.
So you're saying that the same protocols that work for kidney disease, reversing dementia, anxiety, and clearing relationships all you can do the same protocols. You have something a little extra, but the basic protocol is the same for all of them.
Yes.
So could you explain what you mean by it having to do with frequency?
Okay, so
energy.
So let's talk about energy. I hear so many people say, "Oh, that person has a lot of negative energy."
Okay.
I always laugh because there's no such thing. If you look at the scale of absolutes, when you get down to 0 degrees absolute, there is no negative temperature. It starts at 0 and it works its way up.
Okay.
And so the internal energy of something starts as 0 energy and it works its way up. So, then they say, well, what's dark energy? Well, dark energy, if you can imagine, you've got a dimmer on your dining room lamp.
Okay. Yeah.
And you set it maximum, and now you turn it down to about a quarter of its voltage, and that light bulb will be a little bit dimmer.
Right.
Now, compared to all the other light bulbs in the room, it looks dark. Right now,
True.
now
Yeah.
you turn off all the light bulbs in the room,
And then it looks light.
and then it looks light. So it's really contrasts
And perspective.
and perspectives. So now you imagine the whole body being this bright light bulb, and now you've got right around your liver this dark area. And that dark area doesn't mean it's zero, because if it was zero or negative, it would be dead.
Okay.
Right? So really, it's just a dim spot on you, and that's how it looks. So if I take my vision and I focus down and look at the color of that spot, it actually has light. It's just not as bright. So a low energy emotion, for example, shame, guilt, anger, jealousy, those are low energy emotions. When I see them on people, they just look dim. So it's not negative, it's just low. So that's your, what I call a low frequency, as compared to something like joy, happiness, love, all that is high frequency. Courage, all of those things are high frequency. And so they feel bright compared to the low energy stuff. So as a healer, as a person that embraces energy all the time, from the laboratory into working with people, that's how I see it. So that's the first step in understanding the science of all healing. So now what we want to do is take that dimmer off and turn it all the way up for that particular space.
You mean it's that simple? You just turn the dimmer back up?
It's not that simple, because everything is between the ears, right?
Yeah, because of all the stuff we have in between here. Got it.
Right. So what we have between the ears is what I call energetic inertia, right? So people ask me, well, why can't you just wave your magic wand and heal me and poof, I'm done? And I'm because you have years of habits built up and training your energy to go a certain way. And if you're angry all the time, it's like centered down here on either your liver or your gallbladder, which is a meridian that runs up and down your body, right? So you've got it trained to resonate at this really low frequency. And what we have to do is retrain it. And it takes, just imagine your own habits, your lifetime of habits. Let's say you decide to change where you have your silverware drawer. And I know this because it's a true story for me. I changed where I put my coffee filters, right? And I moved to a new house and I put my coffee filters in a cabinet off over the sink, and I had the coffee pot underneath a different set. So I decided to switch everything around after only 2 months. Right. 2 months.
2 months. Okay.
And 2 years later, I was still reaching for the old cabinet every once in a while in that subconscious form, right?
Yeah, so that muscle memory. Yeah, the habit from muscle memory is strong. Right.
And so our habits, our bodies, our beings are built to function on habits. And the reason is that only 0.002% of your brain is conscious. Everything else is unconscious or subconscious. And that way we can preserve that conscious mind. The conscious mind is everything you do of volition, right? I have to go to the store. You get up to the chair and you go to the store. That's not your daily habit.
Right.
And we develop these habits over and over again.
Do we?
Right. And the energy does exactly the same thing. Right. And we have to reestablish new habits. So and it takes approximately 3 months and longer. The longer people work with me, the healthier they get and the healthier they stay. And it doesn't mean that I have to work with them intensely. I have people, talking to me a half hour every month or half hour every other month, and it's plenty to keep them tuned up. Right.
Yeah. And listening to your audios is really helpful.
It makes such a huge difference. I can tell, like if I've talked to them, if I wait a week, like when I talk to them the following week, if their numbers are all like showing really great in numbers, I mean, I do readings on people. Right. And when they show this really huge amount of progress, it means usually they're doing the things I ask them to do, like listening to the audio and drinking their water and going to bed early and things like that, just like really simple stuff. But it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. It's surprising how much simplicity can impact your life. So let's step back a little bit and look at when people are whole and healthy and everything's vibrating optimally.
Okay, so and you're vibrating at a high frequency. So what happens if you have some low energy emotions like anger and guilt? So if we were completely vibrating at this really high frequency, like, there's this published scale, power versus force.
Right.
And they say that when you're fully enlightened, you are vibrating at 1,000. And if you're deep into shame and guilt, you're down in the under 50 range. And then there's this whole scale in between. First of all, if you get to that 1,000 point, you don't have any reason to be alive anymore because you've learned all the lessons.
Right.
So some human comes and tells you that that's where they're vibrating. You can just say, then why are you telling me? Because it stops mattering. If you're down in the 200 or 300, it matters to you. Like you're envious of other people.
Well, and 200 is courage. So, and that's, at least, 200 people are starting to move forward energetically.
Yes. So what happens when you are confronted with something that triggers an anger in you? And usually when you get triggered, it's something from the past that you've moved forward, whether it's this life, usually it is, or previous life, right? That triggers you somehow. So that's a lesson that you need to have. But the rest of you is like generally happy. Like I can get angry at something, like I get angry at injustice, for example, when I see people being unjust to others, like being unkind, like a woman hurting her child unnecessarily, for example.
Yeah.
And so while I'm in that angry state, I have not only the joy running, but I also have the anger running. So now I'm this collection of more than one vibration happening in the body.
And I've always been really, really curious about this because, people talk about raising your vibration or frequency and, but think about it, we have a lot happening and there are times when I'm in shame and then, moments later I can be in joy and, what's happening with that? One frequency doesn't really make sense.
It never did. And when I studied minerals, for example, they can vibrate from a very low frequency to a high frequency depending on how things are bonded together. And so we have this huge number of systems in our body. And if you can imagine every cell, we have 38 to 50 trillion cells. Every cell has 9 trillion. It's an unfathomable number. Say that 3 times fast.
Unfathomable. Oh, yeah. I didn't even get it the first time. Unfathomable.
Hard to comprehend number.
There we go.
We have 9 trillion reactions in every cell every day. So multiply that by 38 to 50 trillion. It's an incomprehensible number. It is so beyond our ability to comprehend. And so I try to, in order for people to understand it, if you take each cell and turn it into a small grain of sand, it weighs as much as 4 aircraft carriers. Right? That's
what?
Yes. So if you take 38 trillion grains of sand.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And you weigh them, it weighs as much as 4 aircraft carriers. So one human cells has 4 aircraft carriers worth of weight when you turn each cell into a grain of sand. That's how huge, that's how many cells we've got running in our body, right?
That's astonishing.
Right. And so you can imagine every cell is vibrating at these different places, and that the vibration is determined by the sum total of your emotions, the sum total of your mindset. Like your mindset can keep holding you back. And I'll get into how you can develop those mindsets that hold you back in just a second. And you have all of this happening. So when we looked at the full spectrum of vibrations of materials, in order to understand the bulk properties of the materials, and in thermodynamics, bulk properties could be something like the heat capacity, like
Okay.
how much thermal energy will it take to raise the temperature of a certain amount by 1 degree. So everything has a certain, it's like having a cup. How much fluid could you put in your cup? How much heat can you put in your cup, and how much will it hold? Right? So these bulk properties on these minerals are complex. You've got this array of vibrations just like we do, and now you want to describe what the general theme is going on.
Right. Yeah. So is that what, when somebody talks about, vibrating in love or above, are we talking about the general theme, or if they're down in shame or fear?
Yes,
That their
it's the
general,
general theme.
the general theme. Okay.
So back in 1907, Einstein came up with this brilliant idea is, let's say we turn that into a single frequency and then ran all the equations with that single frequency. It turned out to match almost exactly the behavior of that material by reducing everything to a single frequency.
Okay.
Right? So now that is kind of like the picture that I imagine, right? All this stuff is happening and your frequency changes from moment to moment. Yes, it does. But
Yeah.
the generalized idea is that you're going to be, when you're at rest, you're going to be in this average place, whatever is
It's like a default.
It's like a default, right?
Default frequency is.
But it's a single frequency that describes everything about you.
Okay.
Right. And what he didn't take into account, and this is the way I imagine it, what he didn't take into account, that when you put certain elements in your matrix, it changes the property in unpredictable ways, and then his equation doesn't work anymore. And that's
you're debunking Einstein. I love it.
So now the whole process of removing, or you can call those the toxins, so removing that toxic emotion, toxic thought process, inflammation in the body, it's toxic to the body. Yeah. Like, all of the things that create the problems is basically reducing it down to removing the single or the pile of toxins that you've developed, right?
Yeah.
So he called that the characteristic frequency. It's kind of like what your characteristic frequency is. Like when you're born, you had it. Mm-hmm. And then your job is to move forward and move up on the scale. And I don't believe in that you can only move up 15 points in a lifetime, because
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah,
I don't have that limiting belief.
No, because we can do what we call quantum leaps.
Oh, we were talking about that earlier before we
yes,
started.
Right. The pre-show.
I want to know more. I want to know more.
Right. So in the pre-show chat, what we talked about is, what is a quantum jump? And when you look at an atom and you've got electrons, and the electrons can only show up in certain places around the atom. And this is also from the early 1900s, when the whole concept of quantum physics was being born. And when an electron jumps levels, it can go up or down. Remember, you can also go down in quantum leaps.
All right.
But when it goes, it's like it winks out of existence and shows up instantaneously in the new place. And the way you get it to move is you put in a certain amount of energy. But the quantum leap, there is no defined path. There's no way you can see how it got from one place to another.
Oh, I bet that's as confusing as all get out.
Yeah, there's no path. Like
path.
You can't. You'll never find. So if you have two levels, let's say you've got two levels. You're at a lower level and you're moving to a higher level. You cannot see the electron ever appearing between this level and that level. You only see it here and never in between.
And that's why it's a leap. And it's a quantum
leap, because quantum just simply means you're subatomic, or approximately atomic. You're down to these very tiny, this very tiny amounts, because in bulk you can't see it because they're really subtle. right?
That
And
makes
you
sense.
start
Yeah.
adding things up, it's hard to see. Like a baseball won't behave the same as a neutron,
Yeah.
right?
No.
So
Very,
you
very
can,
different animals.
right, you can throw a neutron towards a pair of slits, which if you had light, you would see a diffraction pattern on the wall, but you can throw a neutron there and you'll also get a diffraction pattern. But if you throw a baseball at two slits, then you still get baseballs coming out the other side.
Okay.
It won't diffract the
It won't
same.
diffract. No.
No.
Got it. It stays,
So,
it keeps its form because
right.
it keeps its characteristic frequency.
So you can think of quantum leaps in your life is, let's say you are first learning something. It's just like you can watch children, like they'll keep trying to say the same word over and over and they don't get it. They don't say it properly. Like my grandson, for example, he can't say his L's. So he wants the rowing pin or yuk, which means look, right? The rolling pin. He can't say
Right.
his L's, and he can't say his R's properly either. Because one time he came up to me and he goes, look, there's no Spido in Dale. Right? And then, so he'll keep repeating it. He'll hear it over and over again. And then all of a sudden, from one day to the next, they start speaking it properly. So now, as we're thinking about quantum leaps and what's going on in the body, I decided to call this a biophysical dissonance. And what a dissonance is a lack of resonance. And when something is a resonant, that means that what's going, so just imagine that your body wants to vibrate at this high level, and
Right.
most of it is, but you have a place where it's not. So now it's not matching where it wants to be. And you can just imagine it when you've got like your vision board and you've got something that you want. Let's say you want a big fancy house, but you're not doing anything to generate income to be able to get into it. Or you decide that you want to be leaner and you put your, beautiful picture of some, sexy man or woman and you put your head on it, but now you continue to eat your chocolate ice cream and, go out and have McDonald's hamburgers. Your outer behavior and your inner behavior the inner desires don't match.
Isn't it kind of like an orchestra when they're tuning up?
Yes, exactly. Like everybody's not marching in tune, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's tuning to something else, right? So they're all tuning different things.
And that's what your vision board is if you're not doing what you need to.
Right. So we've named it. It's a biophysical dissonance. And
Biophysical dissonance.
right. And where we want to go is into a systemic resonance. So everything is vibrating, meaning that your actions and your desires, your inner desires are congruent. Like some people really don't, like they think they want to be leaner because everybody, you've got all the signals of all these like overly skinny girls or overly, guys with 2% body fat. I think 4 is about the lower limit. 4% body fat with, washboard abs. They think they want that, but in reality, it is so hard to achieve. And even the people that achieve it for short periods of time for their shows and all that, they can't hold on to it very long. It just simply does not work because their bodies do not want that. Right. But we have the inner desire, but the body doesn't. And so there's also that kind of
push-pull. It's a push-pull.
Right. It's an inner conflict. And inner conflicts happen all the time. And inner conflict is really what illness is about. That's basically the bottom line.
Got it. And what did you call it when you're in alignment?
I called it a systemic resonance. So you're resonating, all your systems are operating, your thought processes, your spirit, your mental processes, your emotions, and your physical body are all in alignment, right? Everything's in alignment. You have,
so all systems,
congruence, right?
Resonance.
Right. Systemic resonance is and the process of getting into resonance is the energy healing that we do. Right?
Fabulous.
Now that we named it, let's go to a brief break. I want to remind all of our listeners you're listening to Scientific Healing with Dr. Anastasia Chopelas, and today my guest host is the fabulous Gwen Leopard.
Mhm.
The topic is the science of all healing, helping you understand the science of healing. When we return after the break, we'll dive deeper into scientific healing and how it can work for you. You can actually do simple physical manipulations on yourself to change your mental, emotional state, release blocks, and even release things like pain in your body. And of course, the backup to all of these techniques, the backup is to work out also the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and then relieve the physical. I have a process that does that. We go through one step at a time and clean up all of, so you didn't, whatever condition that you have, whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical, whatever condition that you have, especially if it manifested in the physical, was usually years in the making. You didn't get it overnight, years in the making. One of the ways that I work is I find out when something got manifested in your body, like go back to that year, and then rewrite the story, uncreate the story, redo the story. So it's as if it never happened. It's as if you imagine your life as a tree, and here you are at birth, and each decision that you make will create a different branch, right? So you have all these branches of possibilities, and you're ending up somewhere along the branch. And by doing energy work, it's as if you did not make that decision, and instead you made a different decision, and you end up on another branch. So that's the way I view energy healing with regards to whatever your life is now. And the great thing is that we are infinite beings of light, powerful beings of light, and we can change our history, and we can rewrite things, and we can create whatever life we want. And I'm ready to have a conversation with you if that's what you'd like to have in your life. Either learn it for yourself or to have me help you with it. So I have my contact information is scientifichealer.com/contact or scientifichealer.com/appointment. So you can either write me or have a conversation with me, and I always answer whatever queries come through. And I do it personally because I'm very interested in hearing what you would like to hear. Welcome back. You're listening to Scientific Healing with Dr. Anastasia Chopelas. You can discover more about scientific healing and the deceptively simple processes for opening up your intuition and inner guidance system. Go to scientifichealer.com/energize me to become empowered to heal yourself and others. Before the break, we were talking with my guest host, Gwen Leopard, about the science of all healing. Let's continue this conversation. Welcome back, Gwen.
Glad to be back. Before the break, we were talking about the idea of a characteristic frequency that can drop depending on the impurities, toxins, and one of those toxins is actually inner conflict, as you described. So is inner conflict one of the ways that we get ill?
Yes, exactly. It is the way we get ill.
Yeah.
And, barring something like being in a car accident, the ability to get well afterwards, of course, is, helping remove those inner conflicts. So our bodies are really meant to be well. We are designed to be well. Every system in our body moves towards getting well. You scratch yourself, the skin heals over, the scab falls off, and eventually the scar fades. Sometimes it doesn't. Scarring is one of those things that I've yet to figure out, like what's going on. They just look energetically weird, like it's fractured. But aside from that, you get a cold, you get well. You have an itch from something that you've encountered, you get well. And when you're not getting well, that's where a lot of inner conflict happens. And the other thing is, if you get piles of inner conflict, like one thing happening after another, after another, after another, like you're in an abusive relationship, that can get you sick. And it can sometimes take years for the inner toxins to build up, and actually your body cannot handle it anymore and you get sick. And that's what happened to me. I got very, very sick due to a very difficult relationship. And that's why I'm a healer now, because medical science had no answer. How can
Right.
you say you are so stressed out from a difficult relationship? You want one thing, like I wanted a really good relationship. I wanted to do well in my career and also be a great mom, right?
Yeah.
So when one of those things isn't fulfilling, like I got the other two, but when that wasn't fulfilling, and I tried to twist myself into a pretzel to create that good relationship, it was an inner conflict because I did a lot of stuff I didn't like doing, right?
Yeah. And going outside of your values. So
Right.
what's the solution? And we've talked a lot about, the science behind the illness and being out of, you know, in dissidence or in
Dissonance, right?
dissonance. So,
Dissonance, which is the opposite of resonance.
right. So
So,
you mentioned you use all the protocols, the same protocols on everybody, whatever it is. So what really makes the great strides in them moving forward?
right. So the first thing is to realize that every step matters. If you're climbing a mountain, every step upward matters, right? So every step downward also matters, right? So
That
in
makes
order to
sense.
continue to make progress, you need to make more steps forward than back. And so a tip that I give people all the time is, we know from science that just straightening up the spine can reduce the stress in the body, because stress is toxic and we want to remove as much stress as possible. So every step you can do to remove stress in your life, like I have in my book, The Diamond Healing Method, I have a chapter on 23 or 26 stress busters, right? And these are simple things that people can do. Like I have a lockbox outside my house. You can't see it from the street, but if you're on my porch, you can see it. And then there's a house key in it. So if you ever lose your keys, you can still get into your house, right? And
Right.
that's a worry for some people, just doing simple things like that. Paying your bills when they come in rather than waiting till past the due date. Now you start collecting interest and stuff like that. Like
Right.
doing the things that are going to relieve your stress. Every step in the right direction counts. And so, for example, I tell people energetically, if you stand up straight, your cortisol levels in your body will start reducing almost immediately. And inside of 2 minutes, it goes down by 20%. That's huge. Because
That is
normally,
huge.
because normally it takes days on end for cortisol to dissipate. So now if we can accelerate the process, we are moving up the ladder of being less stressed and moving our frequency up the ladder, right? And
Absolutely.
right,
And
so
it feels good to be
yeah,
upright, be straight.
the same thing with smiling, right? We have this two-way conversation. So this just tells you've got a two-way conversation between your actions and what's happening biochemically in your body. Now that knowledge right there is a lot of power. It's a really powerful message that if what you do on the outside affects your biochemistry on the inside, you can do little things every day to really move your biochemistry in the right direction. Right.
Yeah.
So, and the main thing is that stress, which is created from inner conflict. And then other things is find out what you're allergic to. Go to an allergist. Find out what you're allergic to. You can even get that treated. There are other people that will treat that and help reduce the stress effect on your body, but just staying away from what you're allergic to. Also removing as much toxic stuff in your life, your shampoos, your soaps, your
Oh, yeah.
detergents, right? Your
Yep.
environment, the paint on your walls. Even if you need an air filter inside your house to clean up the air so you're breathing healthier air, your pesticides and eating more organic food and more whatever it is, just reducing the toxic load can make a huge difference. Every
Yeah,
step in the right direction. But
absolutely.
but now what happens when you've gotten too far? What do you do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
My my idea my idea is is to actually train people to take care of it before they have to go to a doctor, before they've got the cancer tumors, before they have heart disease, before they have to take their blood pressure pills. And once you're on them, how do you get off, right?
Yeah, it really makes sense. And yet so many people, won't do anything until it's an emergency. And, how do you get people to actually do the simple things like sit up straight, use baking soda and vinegar instead of toxic, things for your laundry detergent? How do you get people to want to be well?
Well, they have to make a choice. And so health and wellness is all for people who want it, not need it, right? So it's going to get worse, people, because our environment is basically, and especially in the United States, our environment is in bad shape. Right. And now with the current administration rolling back all of the strides we made over the last 20 years, rolling them back in one fell swoop with poor directors of the EPA and the FDA and all of that, it's going to get tough. So, we need to be more vocal about it if that's what you want, right? For me, that's what I want. All the healthy economy in the world isn't going to help if if you've got cancer all over your body. All of that is not going to help. All the money in the world is not going to help. It's not going to solve anything.
No.
Unless if you're ill. So
where can people start? Where do you start with healing?
Right. So where I start with healing is I help the energy body. So in other words, the energy fields and all the ways our body collects and emits energy, I get those things straightened. Yeah. And it's a very quick process, and it needs to be repeated. It's just like you've got to weed your garden to get all the weeds out and keep it from getting overrun with all kinds of stuff you don't want. And so, I do that for people, and I also teach that. And the next thing I do, which is really important, is I do a brain healing. People are saying, I have kidney disease, or I have pain in my body, I have arthritis. Why are you doing a brain healing? The brain is the linchpin to your healthy body. You really need it to be working. People that go into dementia and they start going downhill, it's terminal. They die unless they come and get a brain healing. And I've helped reverse dementia on a few people that had it. But the brain really, really, really needs to operate.
Absolutely.
And so what I do is I reattune the cells to be their original selves, their healthy self. And I'm basically training them. So I'm turning the frequency back up. It's like that light bulb. I'm turning the dimmer back up all the way to full voltage. So now, when I see people after I've worked on them, they are now glowing brightly from head to toe.
Right? So it's like a reset.
It's a reset. We're tuning the cells back to full resonance with their full health, right? And my goal is a healthy 25-year-old, because at 25, your whole cortex has developed, you're fully developed skeletally, muscularly, and I say healthy 25-year-olds because there's some 25-year-olds that aren't, right? So
especially nowadays. So all the things that you've mentioned are just bringing the body back into a peaceful state with itself?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I work with people in two ways. One is I'll work with individuals, kind of VIP treatment, where I work with them one-on-one, and we do that. I give them little assignments to do, like listening to an 11-minute audio every day, or just simply sitting up straight, taking a deep breath, or making sure they go out for a walk every day, or taking their shoes off and grounding, just something that their body is telling me it needs, right? And then the other way I work with people is that I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher since I was a little kid, and I teach people how to do these things for themselves. And right now I'm running a class of people that some of them have never done energy healing before. They're doing it for the first time, and they're totally astonished that it not only works on them, but it also works on their friends and relatives, right? I say, well, you need to try it out on other people.
Of
Right.
course.
So, one says, yeah, my son had a headache and I did this and poof, it was gone. Another one had muscle tension and they did that and poof, it was gone. So imagine how empowering that is, that you do not have to suffer with anything if you don't want to. It doesn't mean that you won't. It means that you will get out of it quicker. Just like if you're in grief, that's when everything is out of alignment. You're missing that person so much it pulls you up out of your body, and you're out of sync with your body. And when my mom died 3 years ago, that happened to me. And it's one of those experiences that you can't explain to people what happens to you until you experience it. And in that experience, I was able to get back on track very quickly. And it doesn't mean I didn't miss her, and it doesn't mean I didn't cry, but I was able to function. I know people that after 20 years of their mom dying still can't function.
Right.
And
I had a similar experience. I met you a little over 5 years ago, and my dad passed shortly after we met, and the work we had done together, I wasn't sobbing. I mean, I had my moments where I was absolutely unconsolable, but my sisters were like, how come you're like, okay? And it really made them angry that I wasn't grieving more.
Mm-hmm.
And I bounced back quicker because of doing the practices that you say, like the calming of the inner chatter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that inner chatter is really where we get into a lot of difficulty. That inner chatter is not, it's not most of the time, because we are designed to be looking around every corner for something wrong. That's how we're designed.
Exactly.
Right. We're looking
the vigilant center.
Right. The vigilant. We're designed for that saber-toothed tiger. We're looking for the saber-toothed tiger ready to pounce on our backs. Right. That's how we're designed. And that's what has helped humanity survive past a lot of that. But now we're not in that environment. In your home, most of the time, 99.99999% of the time, you're safe in your home. So you don't need to be vigilant. But yet we are, because that's how we're designed. And these little techniques are designed to help you get out of that, and into a happier place. And so joy is very high on that frequency scale. And when you're in true joy, not made up joy, not that, let's meditate and do our affirmations and convince ourselves that we're not. That's like, putting a Band-Aid on cancer and hoping it goes away by not looking at it. We have to work through those feelings. We have to, and it can be rapid. It doesn't mean like grief. We have to work through the grief. And it doesn't mean that it has to last for 20 years. It just means that it has to work through our body.
And it goes faster if you're willing to go through those uncomfortable, you have to go through the uncomfortable spots. And so many people want to avoid the uncomfortable spot. So like you're saying, it takes 25 years and they're still grieving because they wouldn't sit with that uncomfortable piece.
Well, and also I've talked with women who've been divorced for a long time and they're still angry at their spouses. It's like, get on with it, a year, maybe two, for your energy and your body to shift, but then move forward. Then move forward, because when you're caught in those old emotions, it's like when I tell people this all the time, and it's actually a lot I say it more simply than it actually is. But if you're thinking of an old relationship, whether it's a spouse or a sibling or a parent or somebody, if you've got a low energy emotion focused at them, anger, jealousy, rage, sadness, sorrow, you have anything, you're still hooked into that low energy channel with them, and it's going to keep you holding you back. It's going to pull you backwards. And when you can release all of that, however you were brought up, like I had, a very difficult childhood at times. I was lucky I had two parents that loved me, but sometimes they weren't that equipped. They were doing their best, but it hurt me in the long run. Like I got told over and over again, you're going to be unhappy when you grow up, right?
Let's just program you to be a sick kid. And a
So,
sick human.
right. And that was
Yeah,
just her way of trying to control me and trying to make me behave in a way that she thought was the right way. Right.
yeah.
But, my way and her ways were different. But, I love my mom and, I miss her still. But yeah, but we get those things. And if you can't let that go and you can't laugh about it and you can't release it and just say, okay, I'm an adult now, I have choices I can make and move forward in that right
Right.
way.
Well, and
And
it's interesting because I yesterday had someone say that you're still hanging on to energy from your former husband. And I thought that I'd released it all. And so it's like layers of the onion. It's like you feel like you've released it all, and then it comes up again when you start telling the story again. And how do you shift that frequency so that it can be an empowering story for other people to come towards you instead of you reliving that pain?
so when you were telling that story, were you emotional?
A little bit.
Yeah, so
There
you
was still
still have a
charge
little
there.
touch of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so as soon as you get emotional, just cut the cords, just release, because you're still hooked into the story. Just release the story out of your system because you've worked through so much. Like you've only got like this little bit. Like when I notice my voice getting a little louder when I'm telling a story, I know, oh, let's let it go. Let's let it go. Cut it away. Bye-bye. Don't need it anymore. I'm
and
done.
and yet you can still use the story as a speaker because you tell stories. You can still use the story without having that. And I know that you're teaching people how to use the cutting the cords and the things that you're just sharing, these processes, and you were just talking about them a little bit ago, that they're not even primed to be in a class. But can you share with us what you're doing with people right now? How can people work with you, because your stuff is
Yes.
just amazing.
Yeah, so for people that want to find out more, you go to scientifichealer.com/energize me, and you can see a little bit what that program's about, how it's delivered, what's in it, what I'm doing with you. It's like you will learn these techniques, and most people that connect with me are entrepreneurs on some level. Like I have one person who is a makeup artist, so she works for herself, right? But she works for movie studios and actors and things like that. But she's her own person. She can choose her hours. So that's one kind of, it's like it runs the whole gamut. So even people that are doing other kinds of work, selling insurance or other kinds of work, when they come in, I give them not only the energy tips, but also how to create more business for themselves. Right. And most entrepreneurs that have worked with me, their businesses have transformed and dramatically. That's like their income goes up and it gets more stable because as an entrepreneur we have this roller coaster income, right?
Right.
And so that's the one. And the other is working with people privately in doing healing. So in both programs I do healing on people, and then I teach in one class, I teach what I'm doing so they can practice them themselves and get into routines and do it every day, like little things that take 1 or 2 minutes. And then the other is to actually do the heavy lifting for them and then give them, okay, you really need to go out for a walk every day, even if it's 5 minutes. Just get out of the house and go for a walk, right? And
Right.
tell them your body is screaming for it and you're not doing it. Why aren't you doing it? And some people, even though they hire me for the VIP program, they still say I need to do a remote. So sometimes if you're really busy, I'll do a remote healing. And that's just possible because of quantum physics. You can do a remote healing.
Yes.
And but in general, I like to have people on the phone with me, and because their body is telling me something and I need to tell them what their body is saying. That's what I tune into. Other people tune into, the people that have passed. Some people tune into angels. Some people, I tune into a lot of that, but really I'm focused on you, the person that you are now. Because this is where we are going to learn all of those really important things. Like you cannot advance without being in a relationship of some sort. Like all the people
Yep.
around you are teaching you the lessons that you have chosen to learn.
Yes, and
That's
I've heard you say it. Relationships are the foundation of your health, your wealth, and then it's and I've been also it's how you interact with society. The
Yeah.
relationships are
Well,
the
they're
basis of everything.
they're even showing people in great relationships their DNA changes such that their immune system is improved and they're healthier
Ooh.
and they live longer. That's happening at UCLA right now as we speak.
Okay, good reason. Check. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right.
Well,
I just opened myself up to keeping my heart open and open to love again. Yes.
well,
Okay.
yeah, it can be all your girlfriends too,
Oh, and it can be
right?
me loving myself
And
because
it
I'm in
can
a
be
great
you loving
relationship with
yourself,
myself.
right? Right. You're
Oh,
right.
oh,
Yeah, so awesome, right?
yeah.
And of course, great relationships come, your foundation for having a great relationship is also loving this being that you are, like
Right.
without reservation, like
Yeah.
unconditionally. And even if like I don't like having this extra weight I've got, I grew up and was skinny most of my life except for right now, and I don't particularly care for it, but I accept it, embrace it, and I show up on video not embarrassed. I show up in pictures and not embarrassed, even though I look and oh yeah, I have a little bit of hanging here, but who cares, it's me. So if you
Yes,
can laugh at
and yeah,
yourself and go, yeah, where did my chin go? Okay, yeah, I'm 65 now. Whoop-de-doo.
yeah, exactly. Look at you at 65. Who would guess? I mean, seriously, you're like a little girl.
Oh, thanks. People are always shocked. Like I meet a lot of 40-year-olds and they'll talk and I go, well, you have to understand I'm a lot older than you. And they go, what? I said, yeah, I have 3 grandchildren. They go, what? No, you can't. And I say, yeah, I'm 65. And they go, oh. And every time that happens, I'm just grin. I go home and it's made my
Oh.
day, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
hear you.
right. So, anyhow, I am out of time. And so let's wrap up. Thank you, Gwen, for being here. And I love the conversation and all that you offered up to help clarify for people what, the science of all healing is all about.
Yep, science of all healing. It's quite an ambitious title.
Well, it's just the way I see it. As a scientist, we like to, develop theories and, really put everything in a nice, neat bow. Like Einstein wanted to understand, figure out what the connection is between gravitational pull and the pull of neutrons and protons and electrons holding together to create atoms, the atomic forces. He wanted to
Right?
have the universal force and he wanted to understand that. So I'm like that. I want to have a universal solution to all of our ills, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
fantastic. Thank
Okay,
you.
so thank you for listening to Scientific Healing for our wonderful guest host, Gwen Leopard. Let's you and I connect. Go to scientifichealer.com/energize me, which is for those of you that are ready to get to a new place in your life, whether it's to help others or get better yourself. And connect with me at scientifichealer.com/appointment to speak with me about any of this and get the help that you need right away. If you enjoyed this program, please give it a 5-star or a thumbs up rating, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe to my channel. This is Dr. Anastasia Chopelas. Until next time.